The Ministry of Timelines bears no official responsibility for the content of this research. The committee has issued a Priority 4 alert until the anti-entropy device has been observed or extracted. The coronal suture has been placed on indefinite standby. Suitable detention timelines have been found to house all ersatz intelligences for debrief. Intervention assets are now active. In the years leading up to 2360, Parliament proposed multiple laws calling for the dismantling of the Royal Computing Company, in response to which the RCC shut down every engine in Parliament, telling the MPs, urging them to think on their actions. With the King's loyalty to the Commonwealth also under question, after rumours spread of his association to the mythical beings known as the Seraph, he sensed the opportunity for political gain and brought forwards an investigation into the RCC. This investigation revealed that the RCC was being run by an angel known as Jibril, from aboard a Seraph battleship named the Killing Time, and that the company, which produced every AWE and engine in the Commonwealth, was preparing to strike from within when the contingency finally arrived. A raid was organised, with the assistance of the Cardew, task managers and the Drake, and every site controlled by the RCC across the Commonwealth, both secret and public, was attacked. The death toll was in the millions. But Jibril, the Killing Time, and the Seraph that had been running the RCC were captured. The Commonwealth could once again be assured that its engine systems were safely their own. The RCC was then broken down into smaller parts, ensuring that no one would ever again be able to threaten the Commonwealth in the same way. With the RCC dissolved, Parliament turned its attention to the multi-dimensional heist on HHH. In 2360, the King gave a rousing speech on the subterfuge of the RCC, the massive battle that followed, and the renewed freedom now enjoyed by the Commonwealth. This was well received by the civilian population that survived the onslaught. Mr. Smith was then chosen by Parliament and the Prime Minister for the position of First Clerk, a new position of authority within the government, with a mandate to plan and oversee the overhaul of the entire Commonwealth infrastructure. The scope of this mandate covered not only physical structures, but also bureaucratic and even military organisational structures. This was set to span decades. In a private meeting, Mr. Smith insisted that King Montgomery submit to a blood test, implying there was far more to the King's long life and youthful countenance than had publicly been revealed. The King rebuffed him, saying there was no need for such a measure and that he had simply taken the blue immortality serum. Mr. Smith called this a mistake and offered the King a nice steak dinner in an attempt to persuade him. Preparations for an elaborate interdimensional heist on HHH to steal their anti-entropic device were conducted by the Council of Four and its Codronite allies in late 2360. The Order of the Drake provided ships for generous energy subsidies. The Cardew provided planetoid drones to facilitate operational communications during the heist. The task managers provided hot leaf water, a substance legally distinct from the long outlawed tea of the Commonwealth. After some translation errors caused by rather too in-depth knowledge of secret agent anime, the Codronites allowed Daisy to join the operation, the cartel's legendary undead ether drake and hero of the War of Death. Codronites were eager to partake in any action against the Pleebles in what they refer to as the Pleeble Plan, in which all Pleebles would be hired permanently. It became clear why the King was against having his blood tested when doctors administering the test could not pierce the King's flesh in order to extract a sample. This forced the King to reveal, flexing his divinely radiant wings, that he was in fact a seraph, but that the galaxy should refer to him and his kin as Cybrax. He explained that he had been shackled to his organic meat suit, having imbibed the blue serum, and that his true name was Metatron, the voice of God. He had no memory of his past, only informed of it by his brethren, but did not need those memories, for he knew his purpose: to lead the Commonwealth to defeat the contingency in the Great Test. A shocked Parliament voted that the king should request his full memories from Morningstar, who had been shown to be able to restore a Seraph's memory. On witnessing the failed blood test, First Clerk Smith addressed Parliament, saying that, "I know you gentlemen have been through a lot, but when you find the time, I'd rather not spend the rest of 2360 tied to this fracking couch." The pre-sapient roachoid population of the Mirror Earth were finally uplifted by parliamentary law. Commonwealth interest in the system quickly evaporated, completely coincidentally, as hordes of roaches swarmed the planet. Declaring that humanity shall no longer be subject to the slow, crude, naturally occurring hyperlanes of the past, First Clerk Smith embarked on a previously unimaginable redefinition of space travel throughout the Commonwealth in 2361. Plans for artificial hyper-relays were finalised, and construction began of a network that promised to connect the Commonwealth systems and the galaxy with unprecedented FTL jump speeds. In a great accomplishment, one lucky scientist was uploaded into the completed Science Nexus. Railings were installed on the walkways above the Science Nexus that same afternoon, in order to prevent further lucky uploads. Picked up by sensors newly synchronized in preparation for the impending health, happiness and hedonism heist, Commonwealth and Task Manager astronomers were baffled by the rapid explosion of multiple Codronite-controlled stars, leading to the formation of black holes. Having asked the Codronites the very reasonable and quite restrained question, "Why are stars exploding?" the Allied forces received a curt lesson in physics. They were told that the stars were, in fact, imploding to form black holes, a process that causes a subsequent explosion, and were reassured that the stars still existed, just in the form of black holes. This did not reassure the Allied forces as much as the smiles on the Codronite faces suggested it should. As a smokescreen for the imminent heist, the Codronites declared war on HHH in 2362. 10 months later, an HHH fleet entered Commonwealth territory en route to the Codronite cartel capital. Technically not at war with Triple H, the Commonwealth Parliament debated whether the violation of its sovereignty should be considered an act of war, a debate that became academic when the fleet vanished, having last been spotted in the Vargie Maelstrom black hole system. Nevertheless, Parliament continued to debate for 2 more months before coming to the resolution to wait and see. In 2364, the King informed Codronite leadership of their imminent salvation from the Triple H fleets threatening the Etherophasic engine, and who had been bombarding their capital of Bebak for the better part of a year. The Pleebles were exploiting their freedom to fly throughout Commonwealth space unimpeded, getting them close enough to Codronite space to use their jump drive to bypass borders and travel directly to the Codronite capital. Utterly shocked at the news, the Codronite Vice President looked out of their windows for the first time in nearly 3 decades. Only in that moment did they see the bombs falling around them, exclaiming, "How could we have let this happen?" The Vice President then begged for assistance from their allies in the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth assisted, and destroyed the pitiful Pleeble armada with their mighty fleets. Upon being saved, the Codronite cartel declared themselves to be eternally indebted to the Commonwealth. This eternal gratitude lasted until the realization that by magnanimously allowing the Commonwealth scientists to analyze the wreckage of the ships they had destroyed, they could immediately be free of their debt. The gratitude of the Codronite's leadership is truly infinite. The First Clerk's project entered its second phase in late 2365, setting its sight on building new habitats all across the Commonwealth, and plans were drawn up for habitations to be built in many previously unoccupied systems, with the promise that the vast void of space between the colonies would soon be filled with new bastions of commerce, life, and opportunity. The people of the Commonwealth celebrated. Parliament passed a landslide vote of full confidence in First Clerk Smith in 2366. It was thought the initial efforts to levy the motion of no confidence had come from the king, known to be jealous of Smith's growing popularity and enraged by his pro-clerk agenda. Such was the king's anger that he was also irrationally upset that it was under Smith's guidance that the economy had never been stronger. The passing vote an act of defiance against this irrationality. Cracks in the supply chain began to show as the Commonwealth struggled to distribute enough minerals to sustain its ambitious production targets. Introducing new high-powered mining equipment increased production at the cost of shifting the deficit from minerals to energy. It was serendipitous, therefore, when King Steve of the Task Managers sought an audience with King Montgomery, in a desperate bid to unload his empire's overproduction of minerals on literally anyone who would take them, for any price, before they literally jettisoned them into space. The Commonwealth Royal Court declared Tuesdays to be Bring Your Cousin to Work Day in honour of the rumoured incestuous heritage of the Windsors. King Montgomery I caught whiff of this slight and forgot all diplomatic protocol as he reprogrammed his new Ministry of GPT, AWE, diplomacy to generate on-demand insults he could gleefully and repeatedly hurl towards King Steve of the Task Managers, as AWEs emphasised the A over the I in AI. Steve took the weak and poorly constructed insults in his stride, at one point even retorting, "Incest is wincest." The revelation explained the newly advanced physics theory to come from King Steve, where all Dyson spheres were secretly powered by star-sized rodents running inside them like a hamster wheel. First Clerk Smith took notes. First Clerk Smith set his sights on military reform in 2368, retrofitting star bases en masse to augment the output and maintenance of the Commonwealth's new mega shipyard in the Chara system. The next generation of dark matter warships entered production, and the military bureaucracy was optimized and restructured to ensure that the new fleets were commanded by the greatest military minds of the generation. Later the next year, after approximately 7 years of warfare, the Triple H Multiversal Megacorp's head office cut ties with its branch empire in our universe, withdrawing all support and abandoning its assets overnight. Codronite necromancers gleefully paraded down the streets of Triple H worlds, employing plebeian citizens in a lavish display of proprietary dark magic. 17. What the hell? I was promised the last one would be the last one. Never mind. The backbone of Smith's hyper-relay network, spanning the length of the Commonwealth space into the Codronites, Task Manager, and former Triple H borders, was completed at the start of 2370. Granting the Sol system, along with a smattering of fortuitously located colonies, faster than light travel between systems. The backbone was only the beginning. Further construction already undertaken to connect all colonized systems to the network. Despite offers from his fellow Seraph, King Montgomery was reluctant to restore full memories of his past existence as Metatron, repeating that he knew his purpose and need not be burdened by unnecessary additional information. The king was prompted about his knowledge of the Seraph's plans for humanity's ascension, but gave only vague and evasive responses, describing it as being according to God's will. A particularly lucrative commercial pact was offered to the Commonwealth near the end of the next year, 2371, and it came from an unlikely source, the Church of Jeff, a mostly unremarkable bulwark empire in the galactic northwest, famous for its invention of the Jeff pad. The Commonwealth graciously accepted, having been ignorant of the scope of the vassal's powerful economy until that point. Historians of the Church of Jeff would later mark this event as a key point in the history of their people. Parliament voted that the king recollect all memories from Metatron and report everything back to Parliament. The king graciously accepted the offer, but told them he needed a few minutes, popped out the back, and had a beer. This skillful diplomatic ploy meant Parliament completely forgot about enforcing its mandate and got on with some other, assumably corrupt business. At the end of 2372, having made breakthroughs from studying the wreckage of precursor devices, the first true gateway came online in the Sol system, a technological leap over the hyper-relays of the past. The gateway allowed instantaneous travel to any other gateway in the galaxy, connecting the heart of the Commonwealth to key allied locations around the galaxy. Plans were made to expand the network to the edges of Commonwealth space, with internal gates to follow that would optimize the Commonwealth's burgeoning trade network. In 2374, the devious First Clerk Smith created a scientific mandate to design megastructures of unprecedented scope and power. Truly galactic wonders. Smith was particularly keen on developing Ringworld technology, based on the Task Manager's damaged home system. Although matter decompression technology was initially prioritized to free the Commonwealth economy from its dependence on Task Manager mineral handouts. Having seen the power of the Church of Jeff's economy, the Commonwealth Parliament debated whether their recent joint commercial pact would be more lucrative if instead of more traditional trade, Jeff simply gave them resources. For nothing. The logic was compelling, and the vote passed with a slim majority for a war of vassalization against Jeff and their current overlord, the Republic of Skrekken. As resources were diverted to prepare for the impending war effort, First Clerk Smith watched in horror, helpless as his infrastructure timetables crumbled. A way to donate dark matter directly to the Codronites was founded in 2375. In a bid to stop the cartel from blowing up stars in order to claim the dark matter. It was undecided whether the Save a Sun Foundation was charitable or instead a form of extortion. King Montgomery then toured the leadership of the Federation to drum up support for his war plans against the Church of Jeff. Whilst visiting the task managers, Montgomery arrived early, interrupting an impromptu trade summit between the task managers and the Codronites, who had for years been requesting to trade in dark matter with anyone who would listen. Montgomery's arrival derailed the Codronites' latest attempt, right in the middle of its 1-800-Save-A-Sun marketing pitch. All that came from the negotiation was increased mineral trade between the Commonwealth and task managers, with the Codronites departing in total frustration. Galaxy community members were concerned about humanity dictating galactic policy on warfare, in preparation for the arrival of the contingency, in stark contrast to its past stance of peace and unity. Tentative agreement was, however, reached for the vassalization war declaration. This despite being unable to get in contact with the Cardu consciousness, who had taken to hiding behind the shield of its recently developed answering machine technology, deployed whenever galactic policy shifted in the direction of its endless circles. Circles. The Commonwealth expected more allied support in the war against the Church of Jeff than was ultimately provided, leaving them to bear the brunt of their own warmongering campaign. King Montgomery even commented, "Oh boy, this war thing is sure a bit of a pain. Why did we ever do it?" His question was answered when reports from the front lines detailed the existence of a deluxe Jeff Brand Mega Shipyard Pro, the Commonwealth quickly scheming to annex the complex at the conclusion of the war, spending what the dastardly First Clerk Smith described as a Ringworld's worth of influence to lay its claim. Ringworld construction plans were consequently delayed as the new mega shipyard system and its connection to the growing gateway network were haphazardly wedged into Smith's intricate plans like the wedgie the king wanted so desperately to give him. For the generation of admirals who would face the contingency within the next 20 years, this vassalization war also provided a fantastic opportunity to gain real-world military experience. Among those commanding the fleets was the first AWE Admiral, Eleanor Lovelace, who, Even though this archivist does not understand the reasoning, the king nevertheless requested it to be specifically noted was made admiral in charge of the 60th Reserve Fleet. Having apparently forgotten about the need to bring his own Commonwealth soldiers to the conflict, the king toured the Federation asking for armies to assault the well-defended holdings of the Bulwark of Jeff. For a minor monthly dark matter trade, King Steve of the Task Managers agreed to the request, before gleefully revealing the latest innovation in Task Manager combat: newly minted Mega Warforms. The Seraph Montgomery was stunned by the appearance of these advanced AWEs, prompting mutterings about heresy and artificial seraphs. As the Commonwealth Mega Art installation came fully online in 2381, work began on the construction of a matter decompressor and Dyson sphere to provide limitless energy and minerals. Citizens of Morris, who had been constructing handheld alloy dice for D&D nerds for decades, were thrilled at the challenge of constructing a star-sized D20. King Montgomery was then appalled as he bore witness to the Task Manager's AWE Mega Warform armies, voicing his claim that they were heretical artificial seraphs. Montgomery then demanded King Steve's AWE servant, Jamesbot, reveal how they came to possess seraph technology, and additionally to cease immediately all production of that line of AWEs. In an attempt to intimidate the king and underling, the king revealed his angelic winged aspect and proclaimed himself as Metatron, the voice of God. "Hey, nice wings, man," came the reply, as elsewhere the citizens of Morris happened to be working on the face of the Dyson sphere bearing the number 1. In 2385, the Democratic Republic of Skrekken and the Church of Jeff joined the Royal Purple as vassals. After the brief war, thanks in large part the Mega Warform's rather convincing posturing. With their vassalization, the Church of Jeff surrendered their mega shipyard to direct control by the Commonwealth. The king celebrated the impending influx of resources from the now one-sided trading with Jeff. And a quiet vote was passed to convert the Empire into a prospectorium to supercharge this, again, trading. Only after the conclusion of the war was the Commonwealth informed by the Central Galactic bureaucracy that galactic law required the Commonwealth to support the Bulwark under its previous Overlord agreement for a set number of years. Not only did the resources not come, but the Commonwealth was obliged to spend its own resources and influence propping up the Church of Jeff's economy. It was almost insulting enough to start a war. This meant the final holdout of freedom was vassalized in May of 2385. Peace in our time. Unless you were a vassal. 7 gateways came online at key strategic locations across the Commonwealth over the next year. The first to be completed after the initial Sol Gateway. Further plans for the construction of a Ringworld were once again put on hold, as the Commonwealth hemorrhaged resources and influence to Jeff. Still, the Jeffpad 8000 was pretty sweet. Cebu, daughter of Feti, was elected Prime Minister of the Commonwealth in 2389, the first cybernetic individual ever to hold the position. So impressed by their natural aptitude for the position, King Montgomery was caught on camera saying, "Can we reform the government into an oligarchy to keep this one around?" and apparently joking that he would handwrite an amendment to the Constitution to extend their term in office. An unimpressed Parliament quietly reminded the king that a figurehead should stick to reading prepared speeches. The king, having nothing prepared, dutifully offered no response. The agreement for the Church of Jeff's Prospectorium was finalised and passed in 2391. A shoestring deal, it was explicitly designed to require the least possible effort on the part of the Commonwealth, so that they could then focus their resources and attention on other areas, like the crazy first clerk's boondoggle Ringworld. Technological advances in the wake of the War of Death made dark matter technology fashionable galaxy-wide, combined with the Codronite's ethrophasic backup plan being a constant drain on dark matter reserves. This resource quickly became the most sought-after substance in the galaxy. The Cardu consciousness, ever the peaceful, unknowable entity, offered large quantities of dark matter to the Commonwealth from its extensive stockpile, in exchange for the technology to actually make use of it themselves, having foregone active participation in the meaningless circular conflicts of recent history. They found they were at a severe technological disadvantage, fictional anime depictions of dark matter technology somehow being a fair bit less useful than the real thing. After years of delays caused by frivolous wars of vassalization, ground was finally broken in the Bernard star system in 2393, on the construction of the mad First Clerk Smith's precious Ringworld. Metaphorical ground, at least, as it was being built in space, a crucial part of the blueprint that First Clerk Smith insisted on. Voices of dissent claiming that shipping alloys to a construction platform hardly counted as construction were silenced. Again, thanks to the devious Smith's insistence that the Ringworld would be constructed in space, a single jump away from the Sol system. Smith proclaimed that his precious would be the crowning achievement of his 33-plus year infrastructure project. Yet there remained a strongly held fear that it would not be completed or productive until years after the arrival of the contingency. The Codronite cartel warned that their efforts to peacefully secure the vast quantities of dark matter needed in construction of the fabled Plan B had failed to garner the attention of the galactic community. 1-800-SAVE-A-SUN had failed, and stars across the galaxy once again began to wink out after visits from the mysterious gargantuan cuboid monetary profit machines, controlled, of course, by the Codronite cartel. The Commonwealth and its allies only hoped that after the thousands of years it would take for their light to stop reaching the galaxy's inhabited systems, hopefully someone would be alive to notice. In 2394, shocking news reached the Commonwealth. The curators might or might not have been destroyed. Potentially extremely upsetting news. The Order of the Drake demanded the right to investigate the Commonwealth's Ringworld site after accusing the Commonwealth of using it to produce weapons of mass destruction. The Commonwealth assured the Drakes that they were absolutely building weapons of mass destruction at the site and everywhere else, and that there was no need for an investigation. The Drakes were then happy to drop the subject. Just before the end of the 24th century, gateway construction plans advanced to a point where a gateway was operational or under construction in every inhabited system in the Commonwealth, with any colony a single jump away from any other. The Commonwealth would soon be connected at a level never before known in the history of the galaxy. Businesses were thrilled to be able to introduce express next-day delivery services to any planet or habitat in the Commonwealth, a marked improvement over the previous express next decade delivery model. Celebrations for the dawning of the 25th century were tempered by the knowledge that the contingency threat was prophesied to appear at any time. A kind of quiet dread loomed over the galaxy. Having constructed every grand and practical megastructure that Commonwealth science had offered to him, the first clerk began construction in the Echavira system of a so-called quantum catapult, a ludicrous pulsar-powered device designed to fling ships across the galaxy chaotically and inaccurately. Smith asked scientists for their next batch of ideas of megastructures to build, but the scientific community collectively balked, telling him that they had thought of, built, or stolen other empires' versions of every conceivable structure, and that at this point in their careers, they really just wanted to design a can opener that actually worked. Suddenly and without warning, psionic entities ripped through the shroud into reality, as the backup plan proceeded in Codronite space. These entities in Commonwealth space were defeated by local system defences in such short order that they almost went unnoticed by the general populace, who debated whether it was all just an elaborate hoax. The Drakes, typically the warlike member of the Federation, expressed mounting concerns at the reality-perforating experiments being conducted in Codronite space, and the continued widespread erasure of the galaxy's stars. The composition of the Drake's fleets was exposed in 2405. Having decided that trying to make a ship survive a single shot from a contingency ship was an absolute waste of time, they then stripped all ships of shields and armour, and concentrated only on weaponry. The Commonwealth's military experts dubbed these ships glass cannons. A fleet of corvettes also seemed to have been designed as nothing more than a distraction, merely engines and sensors strapped to a power plant to try and draw the contingency's fire. In the same year, Mr. Smith revealed himself to be the voice of the contingency. The architect, who had overhauled every facet of the Commonwealth for nearly 40 years, had in fact been a member of the very entity that the Commonwealth and its allies had been preparing to fight for over a century. Shock and horror ran rampant in the small circle of those who had learned the truth. What were his motives? Could the Commonwealth be trusted in the war to come? Had the Quadranites discovered a plentiful source of dark matter-filled stars for Plan B? It was also in 2405 that the heist team finally arrived back in our reality, after being missing for nearly 40 years. The caper was finally discovered to have been a total success, and that Jerry, the Triple H intern who was to be the fall guy for the operation, had, well, fallen. Good job, Jerry. The anti-entropy device was sent to Triple H homeworld in this reality and set off from the cubicle, the sole place in the Commonwealth timeline where the device could actually work. With reality apparently saved, the MPs steeled themselves for the imminent arrival of the contingency, and the final existential threat they hoped they would ever have to face. This concludes our analysis of the pre-contingency era. Please refer to the next chapter of this report for further details on the Commonwealth timeline.